I'll come back to the chat. If you have questions, just put it there and I'll share it. We can talk about these things as they come up. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the structure of speaking question number 4. And then we're going to do an example together. That's going to be one of the first things that we do. So I want you to be ready to speak. You're going to practice speaking. We're going to do it together. So we're going to do that in just about 2 minutes. And then after that, we're going to look at some examples of other people doing the same question, listening to their answers and learning from their answers and learning from the things that they do well and the things that they could do better. So that's what we're going to do together. Lots of things. We'll get right into it. So let's see here. Question 4 is an academic lecture, and you have to explain the topic of the listening and the main points from the lecture. You have 60 to 120 seconds to listen, so it's about 1 or 2 minutes. The lecture is pretty short. You have 30 seconds to prepare. I'm sorry, that's a mistake. It's just 20 seconds to prepare. Sorry, I made a mistake here. It's 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. When you do the question 3, you have 30 seconds, but this question you have 20 seconds. So I apologize for that. And let's go to the next one here. So this is from ETS. Let me try to move my big head here. So this is from ETS, the company that makes the TOEFL. This is their 4. I'm going to just try to, how can I get this? Yeah, let me make my head a lot smaller. So this is from their grading criteria, what they use to grade your response. So this is the information that we're going to use to try and bring everything together to try to help you improve your speaking. They judge you based on the description, which is general. It's like basically you answered the question and you didn't go off topic. The delivery is, how you spoke. Did you speak clearly and naturally and comfortably? The language use is your grammar and vocabulary for the most part. Did you have good grammar, good vocabulary? Did you show a wide range of vocabulary? That's something that they look for. That's one reason why we sometimes, teach some phrases that are useful because you want to try to show a wide range of vocabulary. And topic development, and that is basically that you have a structure. That's the kind of template where you have an introduction and a body and a conclusion. So this is pretty simple stuff. What we do at TST Prep and what I do with my students is that I try to have them think in these terms. It's a little bit clearer, a little bit easier to judge your own speaking. So it's really important to record your speaking, record your voice, and then check it after. My head looks weird this way. Okay, let's try to get this. Let me just fix this. Okay, hopefully that's better. So this is the grading criteria. Fluency is if you say or too much. If you say or too much, it sounds bad. So you want to make sure that you have 5 or less of those. They're very natural. I say them often. You probably heard me say them already. This is a little live chat. But yeah, so you want to try to reduce that. Tactics are basically the templates, the strategies. That's like if you're following a structure, that's topic development, basically. If you're following a structure when you're speaking. Accent and intonation is what it sounds like. It's okay to have an accent, but if they don't understand what you're saying, that's when accent becomes an issue. Pace of speech is if you're speaking too fast or too slow. Emotional connection is if you sound like a robot or not. This is something that comes up a lot. People don't sound natural and comfortable because this test is not natural and comfortable. It's very unnatural and uncomfortable. So that's why this happens quite often. So that's something you want to try to work on. And let's see here. Spoken grammar is the basically if you speak with correct grammar or not. So sometimes people, when they are trying to use the correct grammar, you'll say something like, instead of like he talks with an S, you'll say he talk. So that's one thing that you have to be careful of. So that's spoken grammar. And then what else do we have here? We have confidence as well. So confidence is if you feel comfortable when you're speaking. If you sound really nervous, it's okay, but if you sound too nervous, it might hurt your score. All right. So we're going to go to a, let's see here. We're going to go to a question here. And so I'm going to play a passage, and you're going to have 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak after the passage finishes. So I'm going to play this audio for you, and it's going to be a lecture. It's going to be an example from TOEFL Speaking question 4. So have a phone or something to help you record your voice, and also a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen so you can take a couple notes. Before I play it, I'm just going to see if anybody had any questions. People are just saying hi, which I appreciate. From Haiti, Guiede. Sorry, my pronunciation. Thank you for coming. Some people from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Brazil. Diana from Colombia, thank you for coming. So Savannah asked, this is my first time here. It's great. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Somebody had a question. Let's see here. Ball K. Hi everyone. What day and time for live? This is my first time. So usually, everyone's in a different time zone, but this is for me Wednesday morning at 9:30 a.m. and that's in Japan. So it changes it's the same every week pretty much. It changes a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on our YouTube channel the lives for the next month. So we're going to do a couple more in the next month, and I'll post them so you can see them. All right, let's get into the question. So let's do an example together, and let's do it this way. Okay. So I'm going to read the directions. Let me zoom in a little bit so this is a little bit clearer. Hopefully you can see this a bit better. Move it over. Okay. So I know it's still small. Let me just kind of play with this a little bit to get it just as clear as possible for you. I'm going to read the directions, and then you'll have to answer the question. Oh, and by the way, you know what? I should change this. You can't see the question until after, so I should change this here. Yeah, so it should look like this. So we'll wait to see the question. So directions. You'll now listen to part of a lecture. You'll then be asked a question about it. After you hear the question, you have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a history class. And just let me know in the chat if you can hear it okay.
The Clovis culture. Have any of you ever heard of the Clovis people before? Well, almost 13,000 years ago, a large group of people from Siberia crossed the Bering Strait, which was then frozen solid, and settled in the Americas. We refer to these settlers as the Clovis people. You've probably never heard of the Clovis people or their culture because they disappeared less than 1,000 years later. But why did the Clovis culture disappear so soon after its arrival in America? One thing to keep in mind is that these people were big game hunters. They relied on mammoths and other huge animals for food. A single mammoth could feed an entire tribe for weeks. Fossil evidence suggests that the mammoths died out around the same time as the Clovis. It has been proposed that the Clovis people overhunted this species, and these huge creatures became extinct because of them. Without the mammoths as a source of food, the Clovis people also died out because they couldn't feed themselves. A more persuasive theory is that the changing weather of the time accounted for the extinction of both mammoths and these ancient people. Both died out during what is known as the Younger Dryas period. This geographical phenomenon occurred around 12,000 BC and lasted for 1,000 years. You can think of the Younger Dryas period as a kind of ice age. The temperatures in the Americas got cold, very, very cold, and the Clovis people had not developed a lifestyle that could deal with such frigid temperatures. In this type of environment, it's easy to imagine how both mammoths and the Clovis people could have eventually died off.
All right, that's time. So now answer the question. Using points and examples from the talk, explain two theories as to why the Clovis people disappeared. You will have 20 seconds to you have 20 seconds to prepare your response. I'm just getting my timer. You can begin preparing now. Okay, and that's time. So you have 60 seconds to speak. You can begin speaking now. All right, and that's time. You might have heard me swear right there. But so that's about 60 seconds. Let me know how you did in the chat. And do you think this is easier, more difficult? One person mentioned, let's see if I can get the comment up here. Amar said, in my pretest, the speaker speaks very quickly. Yeah, so everyone has kind of a different opinion about our practice. Some people say they're more difficult. Some people say they're easier. I would say this one is I like humanities, I like history, and I like languages and things like that. So for me, this is a kind of an easier one. When they're about things that are like astronomy or biology, those are actually more difficult for me personally. So it's going to be up to you, what you think is kind of easier or more difficult. But I hope that you definitely recorded your voice so you can listen back to it. We're going to listen to some recordings right now of other people, but let me know how you did. What do you think? Was it easy? Was it difficult? And how's your speaking? Let me know. So uh, let's uh, let's go to the next one here. Oh, so this is the transcript, and so what you can I'm going to make my head really small here. What you can do is that you can pause the video, or this is live, so you can't pause it, I guess. But if you want to, if you're watching the recording or whatever, you can pause this. You can look. This is what the guy said, basically. So this is the transcript of what the guy said. So I wanted to share that so you can see it. If you had any questions about it, if you wanted to analyze it a little bit more. So that's that. Now let's see what else we got here. Let me go to the next one. So this is a kind of basic template, a basic outline of what you should say and when you should say it. It looks a little funny because I cut the time, but I'll say what the time is here. So let me say something about templates. Lots of people have lots of opinions about templates. I get a lot of comments about templates, lots of questions about them. Templates that I share with you, that I tell you about, like this one here, are just to help you. They're just to guide you. Don't try to copy this exactly. You can if you want, but you don't have to. You want to feel comfortable and confident when you speak. That's the kind of goal of templates, so that you feel comfortable and confident. So use templates in a way that makes you comfortable and confident. If you don't like some of these phrases, then don't use them. But this is the general structure of how it should look, at least. You want to introduce the topic and elaborate on it. So the professor goes into a ton of detail about. So what is this about? It's about Clovis people, right? And then you want to who are, and then you would describe who these people are, right? Here, which wouldn't work because you're talking about people. Then you have to talk about the first example that that helps explain this topic. And so here in this, let's go back to this template. So the Clovis culture. You ever heard of these people? 13,000 years ago, they moved from Siberia across the Bering Strait. But why did the Clovis culture disappear? So that's the topic. Why did these people disappear? And so there's two kind of theories about why they disappeared. So in your answer, you should have talked about these two theories in some way. So for one thing to keep in mind is that these people were big game hunters. So this is one thing you could have talked about, that they relied on mammoths. Maybe the mammoths went extinct or something like that. So then they couldn't eat anything. Another more persuasive theory is that, let's see here, that the Younger Dryas period, this is a geographical, let me get my head out of the way, geographical phenomenon around 12,000 BC. And this is like a kind of ice age, so it got very, very cold. So the topic is the Clovis culture and why it disappeared, and the two kind of subtopics you want to talk about is that they might have disappeared because of the extinction of mammoths, or they might have disappeared because of this new ice age called the Younger Dryas. So you wanted to include those two subtopics in your response. Now, sometimes this question number 4 won't have two subtopics like this, like where it's like, okay, Clovis culture disappeared. Why? Mammoths disappeared. That could be one reason, and another reason might be because of the Younger Dryas period, a kind of mini ice age. So that is one way that it's organized. Another way is that it's like one big subtopic. So let's say they say, why did the Clovis culture disappear? And they just talk about the Younger Dryas period. They just talk about this ice age, and they explain it for a little while. So it could be one of those two styles. They could have two subtopics or just one subtopic. But either way, you want to include the subtopic, whatever subtopic you get, if it's one or two or whatever it is. Okay. Um, and let's see here. So after introducing the topic, the lecturer mentions that. So then you want to say what the first thing they mentioned. So here you would say that the extinction of the Clovis people might have been because of the extinction of the mammoth, the woolly mammoth. He goes on to say that. What does he go on to say? Well, he goes on to say that it could also be from the Younger Dryas period. So that's the next thing that he says. So after hearing this lecture, I now have a better understanding of, so this is a conclusion. You don't need a conclusion, not necessary, but it's a nice thing to have. Okay, so let's listen to some examples. And while we're listening to these examples, I want you to think about these topics, okay, this grading criteria. We're going to listen to these examples, and they are going to be for the same question, okay? So they answered the same question that you did. We're going to look at, I believe, about 4. And let me go really quickly to the chat here. Let's see here. Some people said it's difficult for me. I couldn't respond completely. And so this is one question that people ask, do we need a conclusion? And that's also connected to what Louis Jean asked about, is so I couldn't respond completely. So yeah, this is about time management. If you run out of time, if you don't include everything, not a big deal. Don't worry if you didn't have time to include all of the information. You want to try to include, most of it, of course. A conclusion is not necessary. Think of a conclusion as like an extra 5 seconds in your pocket that you can use if you need the extra time. But you don't have to have a conclusion. It's not completely necessary. And you want to say all the important stuff, but don't get too stressed out if you run out of time. Something that's a little worse would be if you what do I want to say? Oh, if you had a lot of extra time. If you spoke in at like 30 seconds, you're like, I don't know what else to say. I'm done. That's not so great. That's a problem. You need to try to speak for the entire 60 seconds or close to the entire 60 seconds. At least 57 seconds. You really don't want too much dead air. You don't want too much of that dead air. All right. Let me play some examples here and let me know what you guys think in the chat. If it's good, not good, we'll find out right now. Here we go. This one is a little bit hard to hear. Hopefully you can hear it okay.
The Clovis was a large group of people that came from Siberia to North America by crossing the Bering Bridge, and they settled in North America. But they disappeared, and that's why many people don't know about them. There's two theories that suggest a different point of view about the Clovis disappearance, and one theory states that or suggests that Clovis were big hunters, and because of that, they overhunted mammoths, and then the mammoths become extinct. So also the Clovis did. Another theory is more persuasive, and the theory suggests that there was an ice age, and because some research and some fossils that were found, they conclude that mammoths and Clovis disappeared more.
Okay. So first of all, I would say that you should try to use a better mic or at least find a better environment because it's hard to hear, right? So I'm sure you guys had some trouble hearing as well. And that is what happens when you have some trouble hearing. Oh, and so that's what happens when you might not get a good score because the grader can't hear everything. I could hear most of what she said from my end. Let me know if you could hear her. Um, she had good content. So that's the first thing is that she said all of the information from the lectures, about the two theories, about mammoths, and all that kind of stuff, right? So she did that well. Um, she said that there was one theory about the mammoths going extinct and another theory uh, about the younger Dryas period, and she even said the phrase more persuasive theory. So she heard that. Sometimes people ask me, is it okay to repeat vocabulary that you heard in the lecture? And yeah, that's okay as long as it's not like word for word, which you probably won't do. But yeah, that's fine. Um, One issue is just it's part of her mic and part of her just general speaking is the weakness here would be accent and intonation. Um, it was hard to hear some parts. Like the first 30 seconds I heard really well, and then the last 30 seconds I was struggling to try to hear her. The other thing that, one thing that you should know about with accent is a lot of times it's not, what you say, it's how you say it. It's the stress of where you put the stress in a word. So, for example, mammoth. Okay, mammoth. So we're talking about a mammoth. You have to say that word for this question. You have to say mammoth, right? So, what she kept on saying was mammoth, mammoth, something like that, mammoth. And so, since the intonation and stress was on like the mammoth, mammoth, we say mammoth, 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 mammoth. So you hear how if you have the stress in the wrong part of a word, it could be hard to understand. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think you should practice saying mammoth. I doubt you'll have the word mammoth in your response, but just something to keep in mind. All right. Now, let's go to the next one here. Oh, by the way, this is a kind of self-grading checklist. I'm going to run through this once, but this is what you should ask yourself. So I always recommend students work with a teacher. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But if you're working by yourself, if you have to grade your own speaking, here's a checklist for you to try to help you grade your own speaking. It's really hard to check your own speaking, because it's hard to listen to yourself and grade yourself, right? Reading and listening is a bit easier than speaking. So, so did I speak for 57 to 60 seconds? So you want to ask yourself that question. Did you speak long enough? Was my introduction 15 seconds or less? Sometimes people take a long time to get to the point. You want to make sure you get to the point quickly. She did that. So she was pretty good with that. Did I look at the clock? That's, time management. Did you look at it? Did I include 2 transitional words and phrases? That's like, first of all, second, for example, the professor says. Did you use those phrases? Did I speak at a smooth and even pace? That is the one that for her, I would say that she needs to work on, number 6. After 30 seconds, she sounded a bit confused and she was trying to figure out what to say next. So she needs to work on her smoothness. I would recommend, if we were working together, for her to just do the same response again and record it again and see if she can build her confidence the next time and focus on that second part, what she's going to say that time. Natural and conversational. And did you include all the important information? So she did most of these things. It was really good. Most of it is just with accent and intonation. This would score about a 3. Okay. By the way, TOEFL speaking questions, they're graded 1, 2, 3, or 4. Most people get a 3. That's just kind of what happens. If you get a 3 for all the 4 questions, you'll score between a 20 to 22. If you score 4 once, you'll get a 24 or 23. And then if you can score a 4 on 2 or more, you'll probably get a 26. Probably. It's kind of, the ETS doesn't release this information, but that's my general understanding, is that you need to score a 4 on 2 or more speaking questions. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's listen up. And when you're listening, what I want you to do is, I want to see in the chat, let me know what you guys think for this example here. What is this person's weakness? So I want you to listen and tell me, what is this person's weakness and what's their strength? Okay, so either one, weakness or strength, but I want to hear what you guys think. I want you to think about this. I want you to be the teacher. Okay, so let's listen, and hopefully you can hear this. Okay, this is another one that's a little hard to hear. I'll turn the volume up.
The professor in the lecture is talking about the Clovis culture. Who were the people? They traveled from the Siberia 13,000 years ago and settled in America. But they disappeared 1,000 years later. So why did they disappear so soon? The professor gave 2 theories about it. The first theory was that they used to hunt big animals such as mammoths. Now, during that time period, they overhunted that particular animal because it could feed the entire tribes for a few weeks. And it is said that they also died around the same time. So, when the mammoth died, without them, they could not survive, so they extincted. The other theory, which is more persuasive, according to the professor, is that there was a change in weather and it was very, very cold and harsh conditions. And the people were not accustomed to that particular lifestyle. So, the mammoth, as well as the people of the Clovis culture, died and they could not survive due to that harsh condition.
Okay, so what do you think? How is her speaking? What was her strength? What was her weakness? And what score would you give her? Would you give her a 1, 2, 3, or 4? Ones are very rare. A 1 would be like not saying anything. Okay. This person's accent is probably South Asian, probably from India or Bangladesh or Pakistan. I'm just guessing though. So some people have some good things. YFSVDV. I was asking what the accent is from. Isaac, guess her weakness is accent and intonation. And Ricardo said her strength is her confidence. Yeah, she is definitely confident. One thing I'll also say is that, she really didn't have a kind of robot voice. So her accent is South Asian, so there's a little less kind of musicality to it. But in the beginning, she showed emotion. It was really nice, actually. She I forget the part. I wonder if I can just hear that part again.
The professor in the lecture is talking about the Clovis culture. Who were the people? They traveled from the Siberia 13,000 years ago and settled in America. But they disappeared 1,000 years later. So
That's
why
it.
did they disappear so soon?
That's it.
The professor gave 2 theories.
So she said, but they disappeared later. What happened? Why did they disappear so soon? That's great. Okay, that's great that she changed her emotion and sounded more emotionally connected to it. That's great that she did that. And it's really hard to do because it's a TOEFL speaking question, and who cares? Who gives a shit about the Clovis people? But she acts like she cares, which is great, right? So that's really what you want to try to do as much as possible. Sound like you care, and she did that. It was really, really nice. I'm very happy she did that. She had one small spoken grammar thing from the Siberia. We just say from Siberia, um, and yeah, people are saying like yeah that kind of the biggest weakness might be her accent, and Ricardo brings up a great point, and this is what I would say as well. So I can understand everything despite her accent. So yeah, she does have an accent, but it doesn't get in the way of being understood. She's speaking clearly. It sounds natural. She's not speaking too fast, which is sometimes a problem with students from South Asia. But she's a little fast, but it's okay. Um, it's good. I mean, there's words that are a little bit like the way she says "die" is a little bit hard to understand, but everything else is really good. I would actually give the student a 4. That she sounds confident, clear, good vocabulary. Um, Even though there's an accent, it doesn't get in the way of being understood. There's no, somebody said, let me see if I can find the comment here. Somebody said 3.5. Yeah, something that you should know is that the TOEFL doesn't give half scores. It's only 3 or 4. So this is close to a 4. I would say she probably would get a 4. It's because I can understand everything she's saying. So as long as you can understand, that's the most important thing. All right. So if I were to give her any feedback and for her to go through this checklist, yeah, I would say to just work on a couple of those little spoken grammar things, like from the Siberia, and some of the words. Die was one that kind of stood out in my mind. But I mean, it is really good. I wouldn't have her do too much. I'd say let's go to the next question. You did really well. So we have I think 2 more or 3 more to listen to, and but before I do, a word from our sponsor, TST Prep. Get a personalized TOEFL study plan. TST Prep 10% off anything you get at TST Prep. You can use the code TST Prep -Josh. Basically, what TST Prep does right now is that they make sure that students don't waste time. When you work with a private teacher, what they do is that they tell you your schedule. Like what you'll say is that, okay, I work 7 to 3 Monday through Friday. I have to take my kids to soccer practice. I have to do this, this, and this. But I have an hour or 2 a day to study. What can I do? And the great thing about TST Prep is that we have practice tests, practice activities, things designed specifically for TOEFL speaking. Just to give you a quick example of one thing that we do here is that I brought this up is that we had this kind of new technology where we put phrases that you have to say on TOEFL speaking, and you could do this on your own with like Siri or something. But phrases that you have to say for TOEFL speaking, and you practice pronouncing them. You want to make sure that you pronounce these phrases correctly, like in order to. And I want to make sure that I'm able to pronounce all those correctly. If I have some problems with them, so let's say in, I'll do the same one again. Or for example. And I want to make sure that I can pronounce these correctly. So, besides that, they have practice tests. They have everything that you need there. So if you want to basically stop wasting your time looking for stuff online, everything you need is there. Check out tstprep.com, practice tests, activities, all that stuff. And the teachers make a study plan for you. All right. And you could ask me questions somewhere. I'll put a link to the email. I'll put in the chat, contact@tstprep. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is student example question number 3. So this is going to be for the same question about Clovis people. So let's listen, and I want you to tell me in the chat, what is this person's weakness, okay? And what's their strength? What's something that they're doing well, okay? And what score do you think? A 3 or a 4? What do you think? What are they going to get? All right, let's listen. Here we go. Let's go to it's in here. Okay.
A passage is about the Clovis people and how they migrated to America and how they got extinct. If the professor uses the first example of the mama that they always hunt and they overhunted the mama went extinct. And the second instance the professor gave was the climatic condition. It became very cold, almost as cold as ice age, that the Clovis people could not survive. So this gave the reason why the Clovis people and probably the mammals became extinct.
Okay, and that's everything. That's it. He spoke for, just so you know, he spoke for about 35 seconds. I'll put that in the chat. He spoke for about 35 seconds. Uh, somebody asked, let's see here, what's the highest score? The highest score for any one question is a 4. So you're going to give them a score a 1, 2, 3, or 4. There's really, for each question, there's only 4 scores that you can get. You can only get a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which score would you think that he would get? Would he get a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4? And what does he need to work on? What do you think? I'm not sure where the student is from. I am going to guess somewhere in West Africa, maybe like Senegal. Um, it sounds like there's a little bit of a French accent, but I'm not entirely certain. So one weakness that David mentioned is pronunciation. Okay. Yeah, and then Louis Jean said, yeah, it was difficult for me to hear what he was saying. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing, is that I didn't hear what he was saying. What happened was that in the beginning, he was kind of confident, and then his confidence just went way down real quickly. And after his confidence went down, he just started mumbling. So this is what it said. I'll just play it again.
A passage is about the Clovis people and how
So you could hear Clovis people, right?
they migrated to America
And how they migrated to America.
and how they
And this is where he loses it. And how they
got extinct.
get extinct.
If the professor uses the first example of the mama that
And now he starts to mumble. And now he starts to bring things together. So this is something that happens pretty often with students, is that when you lose confidence, your voice changes. Now, this could change in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it can get lower and quieter. Sometimes you can start speaking faster. Sometimes you start mumbling like this. It's a very natural thing to do when you're not sure if you're correct or not. When you're not sure if you're correct, you don't want people to listen to you. So you basically try to make sure that they're not understanding what you're saying, because you're not sure if what you're saying is right or not. We have an expression that I want you to think about and I want you to use, is fake it till you make it, which is basically pretend like you know what you're talking about, pretend like you know what you're doing, and eventually you will make it. So, you fake it, you pretend like you're confident, you pretend that everything is natural, and then hopefully eventually you will make it. So fake it till you make it. I give the same advice for TOEFL. If you're not so confident in your speaking and in your response, pretend like you are. This is a lot easier said than done. It's much easier for me to say that than it is to do it. So it's advice. It'll be something that you'll have to practice, but I wanted to give this example so you have an idea and you can see what happens when you start losing confidence. So try to pretend to be confident. One easy way to do that is actually to just have good body posture, to keep your back straight, chest up. When you're kind of hunched over and you're small like this and your hands are together, your arms are together like this, it's hurting your confidence. So your body actually has an impact on your confidence. So try to put your chest back, chest up, shoulders back, and try to project confidence if possible. Okay. So to go back to this student here, let's see if I can get this. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he had a lot of weaknesses. Basically, what I would do is that I would ask the student to do the same response again. I would talk about, I would tell him to look at the transcript. Okay. And that's okay, when you're practicing. You should have practice tests that have transcripts, and then look at the transcript, see what you have to say, start to get ready to say it, and then do it again and try to build your confidence. Confidence is really the biggest thing for the student. I need to be able to hear what he's saying, so that's the biggest thing. And yeah, so the student, somebody asked, yeah, so that, I didn't hear transitional words either. He just needs to do the same one again. His score would be probably a 2, maybe even a 1. And that's because he didn't speak for 60 seconds. Okay, so he has way too much empty space. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It's a big, big, big problem. All right, let's hear another example here. This one is going to be from Sally. We got 2 more examples. So let's hear what Sally has to say, and let me know in the chat what you think. Yeah, so Romina, thank you. Thank you for the positive comment. Very nice. Here we go.
The professor explained 2 theories on how Clovis people disappeared. First, he mentioned that they were big game hunters. They hunted big mammals for food, such as the mammoth. And consequently, the mammoth get extinct because of their massive hunting activity. As a result, with no food, like no mammoth, they were not able to feed themselves and they were not able to survive. They died out. Another more persuasive theory that professor explained was the Younger Dryas period. It was an ice age like geographical phenomenon where the weather was changing and accounted for the extinction of both the Clovis people and the mammoth because they were not able to develop a mechanism to deal with that very freezing.
Okay. How was that? What do you think her strengths, weaknesses are? What score would you give her? And hi, Dika. Welcome. I'm living in your country right now. I'm in Japan, in Kyoto. So this one is tricky to grade, and let me explain why. And I'm curious to see I'm waiting to see what you. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'll see what you guys think in the chat. But so I don't know if this is the case or not. But I'm going to say one thing about when you're practicing speaking at home. If you're practicing speaking at home for the TOEFL, make sure that you, if you want to know how you're going to perform on test day, make sure that you're studying in the same way that you would on test day. What do I mean? So sometimes we'll have students that do like a trial lesson at TST Prep, or they do like a speaking evaluation or something, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll hear a recording and say, okay, how was it? Great. And they'll say, I only had to record it 3 times, which means that when they're practicing at home, they're preparing more. They're writing out what they're gonna say. They're trying to make sure it's perfect for the teacher, because we're used to taking tests where the teacher grades us. But actually, when you're working with us for TOEFL, we want to know what you're doing wrong. So we want a very natural response that you would give the first time. I get the sense that she might have done this more than once. I could be wrong, but that's the sense that I get. She would probably get a 3. And yeah, the big thing is what people are saying is the pace is a little weird. She needs a little bit more of a musicality to what she's saying. She'll probably get a 3. And another big thing I would say here is emotional connection. She sounds a little, now I don't know who the student is, and I don't know her personality, but she sounds a little angry. I don't know if that's just the accent and normal way of speaking, but it just sounds slightly angry, and which is it's okay. But you just want to sound like you're teaching somebody, So like that's really what you want to sound like. You want to sound like you're teaching somebody when you're doing a question number 4, and hopefully you don't sound like an angry teacher, right? Um, so that's kind of the big thing. Her pace. So let's just listen to a little part here.
The professor explained two theories on how Clovis people disappeared.
So yeah, so I think she's trying to work on her accent a little bit. She's saying like the professor explains 2 theories of why the Clovis people disappeared, right? So it's like very choppy, right? It's kind of choppy. Now this could be that she's working on her accent and intonation, and if you're working on that, that's great, and you should keep working on it, and it's a process, So it's not like you're going to be perfect if you're trying to change. So maybe she has some problems with accent. She's trying to fix it by separating each word individually. But you want to try to bring them together. So I'll just compare what she says to how I would say it.
The professor explained two theories on how Clovis people disappeared.
The professor explains 2 theories on how Clovis people disappeared. So she's doing kind of like one word at a time, but I kind of bring things together and pause. So the professor explains 2 theories, pause, of why the Clovis people disappeared. So this is more about the musicality. This is about pace of speech and emotional connection are the 2 big weaknesses that she would have to work on. So she should be careful with that. And so I would have her do the same response again, and I would really just focus on one phrase to say a bit smoother. Because with a student like this, if she needs to get a 26 or higher on the TOEFL speaking, she's going to have to do more work with musicality of speaking. So I would have her do those pronunciation exercises I showed before, and I would ask her to do just one sentence again, like this first sentence. Let's work on this one sentence together. Let's try to get this a little bit better. And then move on to the next sentence and so on. So you have to kind of focus on one thing at a time. Her content is really good. She knows how to give a response. She apparently heard most of the things from the speaking, so it was really good. But yeah, she just needs to work on her rhythm. And to be honest, that's one of the hardest things to work on. So you kind of have to do that one sentence at a time. Let's listen to one more. Got one more example. All right. You guys are great. Thank you for sticking around. Also, yeah, let me give some of this. Yeah! Haven't given the clap enough. Haven't done my sound effects enough. And also, let me know what time it is where you are right now, because I can be flexible with my time. Some people said it's like 3 a.m. and 1 a.m. where they are. Let me know what time it is where you're at, and maybe I could try to change the time a bit so it's more convenient for people. Let me go to this last one. Let's listen. And let me know what you think the weakness is. Let me go back here. Yeah, okay, here we go.
Okay, according to the lecture, Club's culture were humans that came from Siberia. They came to America crossing the Bering Islands, and there's 2 theories because why they disappeared. The first of all was because they rely on hunting mammals, and by this time they overhunting them, and that's why they didn't have anything to eat, so they died. The second theory is because of the weather. By this time, something called the youngest dry period happened, and this is more realistic theory that might kill the mammals and the humans in this time. They probably couldn't manage the weather. That's why they died.
All right, let's see how we do here. Um, okay, so some people said some times. Okay, so some people it's early. Some people are in Asia. Some people are in South America. It's nighttime. Yeah, so most people the time seems okay for the most part. Dominican Republic. Okay, good. Time seems okay. Um, yeah, so, by the way, let me know what you think is a weakness or strength of this response. One piece of advice, physics toots, said, is my secret to this question is think I'm teaching a kid. Yeah, you want to imagine you're teaching a child. Great advice. And yeah, you want to make sure that you sound like you're teaching a kid, because that's kind of what you're doing in a way. You want to imagine that the grader did not hear the lecture, and you want to explain what it is. Somebody said too much or. I think they might be talking about me, because I'm saying that a lot. I just noticed after the comment. But yeah, I know what he's talking about with this student as well. One thing I will say about this student is that he definitely just did this one time. It didn't sound like he planned everything out. It sounded pretty natural. But he also sounded, and to go back to this, the voice here, to go back to what physics says here, is that he sounds bored. He's like, yeah, so they said this and this and this, which I totally understand. This is not an interesting thing, this topic, but you do want to sound like you kind of care a bit. You want to try to pretend like you care. It'd be helpful. Yeah, so that was the big thing. He had some issues with pronunciation. I think he's from Latin America. There are some words that, when you speak another language that's a Romance language, that's connected to English, like Spanish, for example, one kind of unfair thing that happens is that there's a lot of words that are in Spanish and English, and it's very natural to use your Spanish pronunciation of it. Like mamuta, I think his pronunciation was more how a Spanish speaker would say it, or junga, the younger. So when a word begins with Y, it sounds more like a J. I still understood everything he was saying, so it wasn't such a big deal, but those were a couple that I noticed. And let's see here. He had, I wouldn't say he had a lot of grammar mistakes. He had a couple grammar mistakes. Somebody saying, I'd probably give him a 3. And if I were to give him a piece of advice, I would say to kind of focus on sounding more emotionally connected, so to speak, at a smooth and even pace. It's hard. Like you have 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak about something you really had no idea about before you heard this topic. So it is tricky to do, but that's the advice I would give to this student, is that to try to sound smooth and natural. So let's do the same response again. Try to sound like you care about what you're talking about. Let's imagine you care about these Clovis people. Okay, so let's just say, let's make a crazy assumption that you care about them. So that's what I would say to this student to help them, and they probably score about a 3. But thank you guys for staying to the end. If you like this lesson, I am going to put a link in the chat. I'm doing 2 live lessons today. My other one, I'm going to put the link in the chat here. I would be very appreciative if you could come to it, because I'm looking for, I'm going to teach, it's actually a business English thing, but it is helpful for TOEFL, and I'm going to be giving some live feedback to your writing. So you can practice writing some sentences, and I'm going to give feedback on it. It's all about trying to use these words, trying to use vocabulary.